That advice you're following about saving 6 months of expenses, it was written when rent was half what it is now. And that just invest in index fund strategy assumes you have money left over after groceries. Here's the thing. Most of the personal finance content you've been consuming was created between 2012 and 2019, back when the economy was recovering, interest rates were near zero, and a starter home didn't cost $700,000. But we're not living in that world anymore. And if you're wondering why you can't seem to get ahead even though you're doing everything right, it's not because you're failing. It's because the playbook changed and nobody updated the script. By the end of this, you'll understand exactly which pieces of old advice are actually hurting you right now and what's shifted in the economy that makes following them feel impossible. Right now, Americans are dealing with the highest cost of living increases in 40 years. Rents up 30% since 2020 in most cities. Groceries cost more, cars cost more, and wages? They went up maybe 10% if you're lucky. The advice from 10 years ago didn't account for any of this. Let's start with the biggest one, the emergency fund. You've been told to save 3 to 6 months of expenses before you do anything else. That advice came from a time when the average American could realistically set aside a couple $100 a month, when rent was $1,200 instead of $2,000, when you weren't choosing between filling your gas tank and paying a medical bill. Here's what nobody's saying. If you're living paycheck to paycheck right now, that 6 month fund isn't a goal, it's a fantasy, and beating yourself up for not hitting it is a waste of energy. The reality is, most people today need to focus on a smaller buffer first. Even 1 month of rent in savings changes everything when your car breaks down or your hours get cut. The old advice isn't wrong in theory, it's just completely detached from what's actually possible when your rent alone takes 50% of your income. Now let's talk about investing. The 2010s advice was simple. Max out your 401k, throw everything else into index funds, and let compound interest do the work. And yeah, that works great if you're making enough to cover your bills and still have $500 left over every month. But here's what most people miss. Back then, inflation was low and steady. Your dollar held its value. You could afford to lock money away for 30 years because your rent wasn't going up 15% every lease renewal. Today, locking away money you might desperately need in 2 years doesn't feel smart. It feels risky, especially when withdrawal penalties and taxes mean you lose a chunk of it if life happens and you need it back. I'm not saying don't invest. I'm saying the advice to prioritize long-term investing over short-term stability made sense in a different economy. Right now, having liquidity, actual cash you can access, might be more valuable than an extra 2% in a retirement account you can't touch until you're 60. Let's clarify something important here. Credit cards were always risky, but the 2010s advice treated them like free money as long as you paid them off every month. Travel hacking, cash back, rewards points, it all sounded great when interest rates were 12%. Now, average credit card APR is over 21%. Miss one payment because you had an unexpected expense, and you're paying double-digit interest on groceries you bought 3 months ago. The math changed. The risk is higher. And if you're already tight on cash every month, using credit cards for rewards is playing with fire. One bad month, and you're stuck in a cycle that takes years to get out of. Here's another shift: side hustles. 10 years ago, driving for Uber or selling stuff on Etsy was pitched as this easy way to make extra cash. And for a while, it kind of was. But now, gig work is oversaturated. Everyone's trying to do it. The pay per hour has dropped, and the costs, gas, fees, wear on your car, have all gone up. The real problem starts when people rely on side hustles to cover basic expenses. That's not a side hustle anymore. That's a second job with no benefits, no stability, and no protections. The 2010s made it sound empowering. In 2025, it's often just survival. And then there's housing. The old advice was rent cheap, save up, buy a starter home, build equity. That advice assumed starter homes existed, that you could find something affordable in a decent area and actually qualify for a mortgage. But starter homes are being bought up by investors and turned into rentals. Prices have doubled in most markets. And even if you save up a down payment, higher interest rates mean your monthly mortgage payment is the same as what people were paying for much bigger houses in 2015. Home ownership used to be the default path to building wealth. Now, for a lot of people, it's just not accessible. And the advice that tells you you're falling behind because you're still renting, it's not accounting for the fact that the system changed. So where does that leave you? It means you have to filter the advice you're hearing. A lot of it was built for an economy that doesn't exist anymore. That doesn't mean all of it's useless. It just means you need to adapt it. Emergency funds still matter, but maybe your first goal is 1 month, not 6. Investing is still important, but maybe liquidity comes first if your life isn't stable yet. Credit cards still have a place, but the margin for error is way smaller now. The economy shifted. Costs went up faster than wages. The strategies that worked when things were cheaper and more predictable don't fit as cleanly anymore. Real security comes from understanding what's actually true right now, not what worked a decade ago when the game was different. If this helped you see things more clearly, go ahead and like the video. And if you want more honest breakdowns on what actually matters in your finances today, not 10 years ago, subscribe. We'll keep it real. See you in the next one.